Welcome to the Getting the Deal Done podcast. This is John Martinka, and my special guest today is Matt Tait. Matt's in Indianapolis, Indiana. He's a multiple-time entrepreneur. He is the CEO of Decimo, which he will explain a little bit about, and also the host of the podcast After the First Million. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me today.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you and your background and how you got to be a multiple time or AKA serial entrepreneur.
Well, the funny thing for me is I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and in fact, I was at a family reunion a couple of months ago, and there were 60 people in the room, and I looked around, and 12 of them either were currently or had just gotten done running big companies. And so it's something I grew up around. I actually started my career out. I'm a recovering attorney. Spent a few years practicing law, and then ultimately got into the tech scene. And Decimal is my fourth business that I've run. And this one's even weirder. I'm now a recovering attorney running a bookkeeping, tax, and accounting business. But it's been I think a great kind of conglomeration of all the other things that I've done, and it's been really fun. I mean, as you and I've talked in the past, everybody has to do their taxes. They have to do bookkeeping. Nobody really likes doing it. And we do it really, really well. And it's allowed us to, in the 5 years we've been in business, to grow really extensively to help over 1,000 companies and have over 100 employees.
Oh, 100 employees. That's great. Yeah, you're right. We did chat about, in my world, good financial systems, accurate financial statements mean a lot, and so few companies have them.
Oh, yeah.
They just ignore it. The owner wants the thrill of making a sale, the thrill of having a new product, something like that.
Well, and it's one of those things where, as I talk to companies, one of the things I always tell them is think about your endpoint and work backwards. And so, if at some point you're going to sell your business, or if you're going to get a loan, or if you're going to do something to grow, somebody else is going to be looking at your business. And the primary thing they're going to look at is the financials. And if you set yourself up to have those done well, you'll run your business better. You'll put better systems in place. You'll maximize your own value every single day and year, let alone when you exit, you'll actually maximize the value at exit and the time frame in which you can exit too.
So at Decimo, are your people, would you say they're fractional for a lot of your clients?
Yeah, fractional is not the word I would use. Fractional happens in a lot of situations where you have high level kind of fractional CFOs. They come in, they do some work, they pop out, they come in, they do some work. They're kind of helicopter pilots. Decimal, we do the operational layer that you need to pay your bills, get paid, and track it all. So the bookkeeping, the bill pay, the invoicing. So for us, we're actually in the business every single day. Now, one of the things we talk to our clients about is you come to work as a business owner every day. You deserve a bookkeeping and operational partner that does too. And so, yes, they work with multiple clients, and yes, they do help you and other people, but they're really there as a kind of continuing thread and trend. And I think a lot of times fractional makes it feel more like that helicopter pilot in and out, and we're much more the kind of foundational thing that just works.
Okay. And at what levels do you work with the company? You mentioned CFOs, you do bookkeeping.
Yep.
What else?
We kind of cap out at what people would call controller work. We'll help you understand what happened in your business, and we'll help you put the best systems in place. But if you want somebody to truly help you look into the future, that's where we stop. And we partner with a lot of great fractional CFOs. We actually partner with a lot of great accounting firms, but we do the operational day-to-day work and help people kind of close their books. We'll often work with companies that have their own CFO, and don't want to hire the bookkeepers and the AP clerks and all of that stuff. So we kind of take over that day-to-day aspect and work with people and advise them on how to put the right systems and infrastructure in place. And then we partner with great people that do the kind of forward-looking aspect.
Okay. So is Decimal primarily have clients that are local, regional, national?
Fully national. I think last I checked, we had clients in 44 states.
Okay.
So my team is fully remote. We have employees in 26 states and 5 countries. And so the client base mimics that. Really, the only two states that we try not to work in are Hawaii and Alaska, just because of time zones. But we're in a remote world. We are able to digitally do everything exactly or better than anybody could locally. We compete against the local accountant sometimes, and there's just some really good things about having scale and that allow us to focus and create better client experiences. And so that's been the growth trajectory for us, is having a fully national company with a national employee and client base.
Okay. Now, what kind of tax work do you do for your clients?
Really, a lot of the tax filing and advisory is really what we'll do. Think of that operational layer as, hey, you have to run a business, you have to file your taxes, you have to do 1099s, but then you also want to maximize your own income. And as I say, pay the government as little as possible legally. And to do that, you need a good tax advisor. We had a great opportunity a couple of years ago to actually buy a company from KPMG. They had started or had bought a business that worked with small to mid-sized companies, think like sub 80 million in revenue. And they had a software and a service. And we bought that business from them. It was a fantastic opportunity for us, great relationship with KPMG. And with it came a tax team. So we're lucky enough to have over 20 years of KPMG experience at Decimal in tax advisory and tax filing. And so that's how we help our clients from a tax perspective.
Okay. So as you've built this company and you've built other companies, what are some of the lessons you've learned that others could be helped by knowing?
Number one is, I always joke the three worst things about running any company are HR, IT, and accounting. As a business owner, you want to focus on selling new clients and customers. You want to focus on helping the ones you have. If you do the boring stuff really well, business is a lot easier though. If you set up the right structures and the right systems in place to just get the stuff you don't want to think about, the HR, IT, and accounting, it'll make your life a lot easier. I've learned that the hard way multiple times in each area. But then the other part is just the people side. Our number one value at Decimal is do the right thing. And for us, consistently doing the right thing, setting the foundation, working with clients and customers and employees that all feel the same, that's what makes it fun. And creating that type of atmosphere and community is, I think, one of the things that's helped us to grow and succeed the way that we have.
Yeah. How do you uh, how do you create the culture with everyone or almost everyone remote?
Oh, that's a great question. To me, you have to be very intentional. I always joke with friends of mine that have their own businesses that you can lazily build a great culture if you have an office. You just do that simply by people being together and around each other and going to lunch. When you are working remote, you have to very intentionally think about every aspect of your company. And you have to think, culture, and a great culture isn't fun things to do. It's not ping pong tables, it's not lunches. It's how do you get people to work together and to communicate well and to mentor each other and want to work together. And for us, we intentionally create team situations where they work together. We talk all the time about how our employees, our team members, are islands, and it's our job as a company, as a leadership team, to build bridges. And we do that by making it so that nobody has one-to-one relationships with clients and they're all working together. Our sales team even works together. We had one of our sales team members was just hit $1 million in sales last year. And for the last 3 weeks of the year, the rest of the sales team stopped selling their own clients and started helping him close. I've never seen that in my years working, where they all put down everything because they wanted him to hit that milestone. And so we create that type of atmosphere where everybody just works together. And that's culture to me, is what happens when the chips are down, what happens when people have a need, what happens when people want to celebrate. Yeah. And those are kind of the cool things that become fun stories too.
Yeah. Everyone who has a service business like I do and you do, they've got stories of what went right, what didn't go right.
Yeah.
What are a couple of examples of people where they weren't doing things right and you really saved the day and talk about, where it got them?
One of the biggest things, I just had this conversation today. You see this in organizations, remote or not, but in remote atmospheres, it's easier to do. And that's where you create kind of fiefdoms and silos, where you stop collaborating horizontally, where you have ops and you have sales and you have all of these kind of verticals that you create. And that's worse in a remote environment because it can go longer before it's caught. And a lot of times when people struggle, if you're not on top of measuring their mental health and how they're doing, you'll lose the thread on their insulating. And so we've in the past, I've had hires of mine, direct reports to me, that they just started kind of pulling in and stopped collaborating with the teams with which they serve. And so we start talking a lot about how to be of service. As a sales team, your job is to serve the ops team. Your job is to create great new opportunities for them with really well set expectations and a clearly defined scope. And that's how you serve them to do well at their job. The ops team serves sales by retaining the clients. And there's compensation that goes back and forth, but it's also, hey, the snowball only grows in a company, particularly one that grows as fast as we do, if it doesn't lose snow on the way down the hill. And how do we all work together? And at times we've had ops would create a silo and sales created silos. And now we've created a much better kind of cohesive team structure by incentivizing that type of work. And also, I think it's important to create an environment where failure is okay. Failure is going to happen, particularly if you're moving fast and trying to improve things and being on the bleeding edge of using technology and stuff. Failure is going to happen and it's okay. And I talk a lot about how I fail and creating that atmosphere that makes failure okay makes it so people are less likely to close in on themselves and more likely to just be okay talking about what's working and what's not.
Okay. So you run a full gamut of different kinds of clients.
Yep.
What are, when I get asked about things with the financials, my number one example is when I asked someone, I said, how much faith do you have in your financial statements? And they, blustery, 100%. And I said,
Yeah.
then why are there balance sheet items on the income statement? And I said, what? What kind of things have you seen?
Oh man. I
I
mean,
know you could
everything.
talk all day on this.
Yeah. One of the interesting things for us is when a couple of years into Decimal, we did an analysis to see how many people opened the attachments that we sent with their month-end financials. And we wanted to see, hey, out of our, and round numbers, out of our 200 clients, how many were actually looking at their month-end financials? And it was under 30%. The open rate on those attachments was under 30%. And that to me was just, it wasn't that surprising, but it's crazy. If you think about like how few of these businesses, some of them 20, 30 million, were not looking at their month-end financials. Yeah, it's crazy. Like what it presents to me, and it took me multiple businesses, lots of work and learning to even understand financials myself. I mean, I'm a recovering attorney. You go to law school because you can't count. Um, it took me a long time to just understand what a balance sheet is, how to look at it, how to look at variance analysis, like what's important, how some things on your month-end financials aren't important, but your KPIs that directly affect financials are really important. And like there's a lot of nuance that goes into it. But I would say most people just don't understand their financials and quite frankly don't want to learn. They kind of view themselves as cash bank account businesses. Like I know what's coming in, I know what's going out, I know what my bank account reads, and that's good enough for me. And so that's a lot of what we see. Some of the other crazy stuff is how how many businesses in service and kind of home services have just absolute truckloads of money sitting out there in AR and have been for a while. It's like people are afraid to collect money sometimes And that to me is insane because the first thing I do when I start a company is set up a system that automatically collects money. Like that making money aspect is a big important part of being an entrepreneur. But to see how many businesses have a lot of outstanding AR. Now on the flip side, like being able to put systems and habits in place that help them to create better cash flow and better understanding of where their AR is, that's when it becomes really, really cool.
Yeah, I had a client many years ago, and I was working with the CFO on it, and the uh, the owner goes, "Well, the profit and loss says we're making a lot of money, but there's never any money in the bank." And it ties right into look at your AR, look at your
Oh yeah.
inventory.
Yeah, look at the little things. The other thing is when you look at some of these product type companies that have multiple product lines and getting them to run a P&L on each product can be an extremely eye-opening experience because a lot of times you'll find that sometimes their top line, their biggest revenue driver may be a loser. Like it's losing them money. But their assumption is because it's making a lot of money and the top line revenue is high, that the bottom line must be. And those types of kind of breakout and putting things into different buckets, uh, you can create these really eye-opening experiences for people, that I also find to be fascinating too.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Working with a professional services firm, and one of the people he left, and the CEO said, "Well, we're going to get rid of him anyway because he brags about how much money he brings in, but it's so low margin. We make nothing
Yeah,
on what he brings to the company." And
right.
it's looking at that
It's a
margin.
vanity stat.
Yeah. So, what? Let's switch gears here. You got a podcast after the first million.
Yep.
Talk about it and how you came up with that name. And
Well, as I've done this a few times, I've noticed that there are kind of three general areas to building a company. There's that kind of startup of, hey, I have an idea, I'm building a business, I'm gonna start it. And then on the full other end of the spectrum, there's that like I'm a big company. I've scaled. And there's a lot of content out there on both of those, how to start a company, what it's like to be a startup, what it's like to run a business, how to run it well. But that messy middle in between those two, that's I think really tough. That's where it really tests entrepreneurs. And a lot of times it comes after you reach that first million where you're like, okay, I'm now going to think about getting to 5 million or to 10 million. And as a entrepreneur, I know I've struggled with that's when I have to look myself in the mirror and say, these aren't my skill sets. I have to hire people that do those things, or I have to put processes in place. And I don't love process. I've always rebelled against it. It's why I'm a startup guy. And so we've tried to put together a podcast just talking to business owners about their journey of making it through that messy middle and getting through that after the first million, and trying to create content that can hopefully help people like me do better than I have. You talk about failures, I've failed a ton. I've made a ton of mistakes, and I think kind of normalizing the headspace of what it's like to scale beyond a first million, um, I think is hopefully helpful.
it sounds like Decimo helps people in that
We
place
do.
too.
We do the boring stuff so people can focus on much more interesting things.
Yeah. So, tied to your podcast, it sounds like you do the podcast to educate people, but it's not part of your day-to-day business. Is that correct?
No, it's not part of my day-to-day business. It's as much a passion project for me of just I love working with and helping entrepreneurs and companies. And it ties together because a lot of the businesses that we serve as Decimal, they've been clients or they've worked in their good stories for after the first million, or people that our clients empathize with those stories or want to become that billion-dollar company. And so hearing what it was like to go through the messy middle is interesting. So there's a nice kind of tie-in, but it's really my own therapy of I love to talk to these entrepreneurs and get their stories. And I end up getting selfishly a couple of tips every time I talk to somebody. And so it's a good way for me to learn.
Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, look, building a business is hard. but I think thinking about the exit, thinking about what the end point is and working backwards from what people look at and putting the right systems in place are really helpful.
Okay. One other question. You've got decimal, you're doing all the bookkeeping up to controller, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have plans to expand that into other areas?
Right now our big initiative is we are on the leading edge of implementing AI in accounting. In fact, I'm currently, as of right now, transitioning a couple hundred businesses to an AI native ledger. We want to really help not only accounting, but professional services businesses leverage AI in a way that is impactful to margin, to client experience. And that's our goal this year. And that's our initiative right now is to really step out in front and to do it in a way that is, hey, we've done this, we've led by our actions, and we're willing to help people. And that's kind of what our impact will be this year is we're going to grow through doing that, which selfishly will help us really take a step forward in the industry. It'll help us with acquisitions. But I think in general, if we can help raise the water level, it's going to help a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a big believer in the kind of stuff you do what you're doing with the bookkeeping and the fractional CFOs and HR and payroll services. You're right, it's the boring stuff, but if you screw up on it, you can get in big trouble.
Oh yeah, big trouble.
So, how
So,
do people reach you and Decimal, Matt?
well, it's very easy. They can just go to decimal.com and love to connect on LinkedIn. And it's just Matt Tait on LinkedIn. Very easy to find. And I love meeting people, helping people, and we do at Decimal too.
Yeah. Matt, thanks for being a guest here. It's really been informative, and I do like the services you're doing. So for all the listeners, yeah, look up decimal.com and check out Matt on LinkedIn. And thank you for listening to the Getting the Deal Done podcast.